I'm actually here with a viewer and a New York resident. His name's Elliot Cohen. So, Elliot, you reached out to me.
Hmm.
You've kind of had a little bit of a voting registration, voting nightmare, it sounds.
Right, yeah.
It's a long story. If you could start from the beginning, kind of
Sure.
detail when you started trying to get your voter situation straight and
Right.
what you kind of have been confronted with in New York.
Right. So back in 2011 or 2010 was when I first registered to vote. And back then I left my party registration, my party enrollment blank because I didn't want to necessarily associate with a political party back then. Wasn't sure which party I necessarily wanted to be in. Generally vote along Democratic lines, but occasionally I do vote for the, Workers' Party or the Women's Equality Party. It's usually the same candidate anyway. So um, back in October was the actual deadline to change your party enrollment if you were unaffiliated or in a different party. And I wasn't aware of that. I work the elections generally, and my idea was to, after the general election in November 2015, that would be, when I would start thinking about the presidential election and stuff like that.
Which general election in 2015?
The one in November, just the general election back then. So that was that was around the time when I was making up my mind. And November 14th, like about a month after the deadline actually was, that was when I gave my first donation to Bernie Sanders. And a couple months out from that, in January, when I gave my second donation, was when I started to do the process of registering to vote again. And about a month out from that, on the 25th of February, I got a postcard from the Board of Elections, and it just said that my status was not enrolled. And it told me that I could vote in the primary in September and I could vote in the general election in November, but it had a note on it that said, your party enrollment change has been received. It will not become effective until December 2016. Which doesn't make sense to me. And about a week after that, I got a letter clarifying that and citing election law. It's 5304 2. And basically, what that says is you have to register to vote 25 days before the general election previous to the general election that you want to vote in. So it's the year before. You have to vote 13. You have to change your voter enrollment 13 months before the actual uh, general election, which seems insane to me. About a week after that, I went to the Board of Elections in Westchester. I confirmed with them that I was still unaffiliated. I got kind of upset. And they told me that there was nothing that they could do. They gave me about, a list of 3 people who I could contact in the government, one of whom had nothing to do with what I was, talking about. That's a federal person. I need to contact state people because it's a state law. They told me maybe you can see a judge in Rye or, to dispute it, but it's doubtful. And so, it didn't give me a lot of confidence in the system.
Let me move backwards.
Sure.
So in October, you did change your registration, or you
No.
okay?
No.
Uh,
So, yeah,
and the first time you heard that the October was the time you had to change party affiliation
that was
was
way in March, actually.
right.
February, March.
Right. So
Um,
you seem to be, in your 20s, maybe early 30s, correct?
right. Yeah.
Okay. So were you fishing around in October 2015 for information about the April primary? Did you see anything on social media? Did you see anything in the
Absolutely
mail?
not. No.
Did you
No.
see
No.
anything about
Nothing at all. No. No advertisements. Nothing on the news. Not online. Not. Nothing. No mailers or direct mail. Nothing even on their website until the 1st of October. I found after the fact. And the deadline was October 14th, so that gives you 2 weeks to register. It's a very, very small window. I found a lot of conflicting information after the fact. Some people said it's the 9th of October. Some people say it's the 14th. And, that's not even taking into account the people who are registering online and have to, do 2 weeks before that, which is before they published the schedule on October 1st.
So basically, they publish a schedule on October 1st that gives 2 weeks for you to register.
Right.
I've spoken with people who, when they tried to register online, they were getting error messages, all these things. So there was no awareness, there was no marketing, there was no promotion, there was no communication. So you didn't register in October, thus being ineligible.
Right.
And then continue on, you were saying all these people you were trying to contact.
To that point, I just wanted to say that everything that I found points to that the deadline is still the 25th of March. Everything is talking about the general election, the general election, the general election. Nothing ever says anything about primaries or presidential primaries. Like the last time I could, vote in a presidential election, there wasn't even a primary to vote in. I wasn't thinking about that when I registered originally.
When you say everything else you found cited March, what were you looking at that cited March? And the stuff you found that was talking about a March deadline, that March deadline, did it come off like they were talking about the primary or the general election?
No, the general election.
Okay.
That's all the stuff that's on the New York State and the Westchester Board of Elections website. Anything that was sort of publicizing it was talking about 25 days before the election, which would be if the primary is in April, that's March 25th. And that's what they're talking about is actually first-time voters, people who are unregistered or inactive. So from about the 15th to the 22nd, I was frantically trying to write and draft letters and, research state legislature people I could talk to, the ACLU. I even tried to contact TYT, but wasn't, satisfied with my email. I just kind of gave up. I had too much stuff on my plate at that point, and there's no legitimate way anybody can mount a campaign to change something in 2 weeks.
And are you a student, young professional? What do you got on your plate?
Yeah, I'm a student. I working part-time jobs and stuff like that. I'm just trying to get my future in check and stuff like that. And
so basically, you and a lot of other people, particularly young people who, by the data around the country, would probably vote for Bernie Sanders.
Right.
You're in class, you're doing homework, papers, you have part-time jobs. A lot of people have relationships, whatever it is.
Right.
So you're not exactly, unless you're kind of smacked over the head with information that like the deadline to do something is in 2 weeks, it's not going to be easy for you to find that information and then act on it.
Exactly. So I gave up, and the deadline passed, and about 4 days after that, I found a story on heavy.com that was comparing what was happening in the voter suppression and electoral fraud in Arizona to what's happening in New York. And I was finding, no, I'm not alone, that there's a lot of people who are affected by this, and not even by this specific problem, but that people who registered online found that their voter registration was purged or made inactive.
It's a good segue because I spoke with the writer of that heavy.com piece you're talking about.
Great, yeah.
And she had a lot of interesting things to tell me.
Some of the irregularities I've been seeing, there was one person, for example, he was a New York voter and had voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012. So he'd voted in primaries. He was registered as a Democrat. And then he went to look online and found out that he's no longer a registered Democrat. He's no longer registered with any party, hadn't moved, hadn't changed anything. He has no idea why or how that happened. And it's been, I've just been encountering person after person, voter after voter, who's having the same issue and who is discovering that without changing anything themselves, they're suddenly not able to use their constitutional right to vote. They're not able to participate in the election, and it's baffling to me. There's a very interesting one I encountered on a Facebook group. Was a woman who was registered in New York also, and she found out she'd been registered Democrat for a long time, went online, is no longer registered with any, she's no longer registered. I can't remember, it wasn't with a party or at all, but she went into her local Board of Elections office to talk to someone about it. And they pulled up a record from, I think it was 2012, showing she had changed her party. And she never did that. She had them pull up another form that she knew she had filled out, and the signatures were different. And she was just completely baffled by that. Why is there a form with a signature that's not hers? Don't know. And these problems are just everywhere.
In your reporting, both in Arizona and New York, have you seen anything that makes you think there's something kind of nefarious going on? Because if she's seeing forms that are not her signature, that just doesn't happen,
Right. That one is crazy. It's so hard to know. It's so hard to know if there is something, like you said, if there's something nefarious going on, if we have terrible computer systems and tons of clerical problems. I mean, I'm seeing this not just in New York and Arizona. I'm seeing reports from California, reports from Delaware, reports all over the place. I just wrote another story today about it because there are so many people. What I do know is that whether it's something nefarious or it's some administrative error, it's inexcusable.
Right.
People, whatever the cause is, it's ridiculous that people aren't able to vote, even if it's because of a clerical error. That shouldn't be happening. Our system shouldn't be set up that way.
And one thing I don't understand, because I just interviewed somebody who lives in Westchester in New York, and New York had its registration or change of party affiliation deadline in October. Now, you tell me what young people, not even young people, just anybody, who's really paying attention 6 months before a primary to deadlines that you have to change registration. This person told me there was nothing in the mail to him. He didn't see anything online in October. And I'm seeing that from other people who want to vote. Many of them are young people, kind of lean towards Bernie Sanders, but they're just finding out now that they were supposed to change their party affiliation in October. Do you know of any reason why New York has it in October for an April primary?
I can't think of any good reason. I mean, I encountered that too. October as the deadline for changing your party affiliation. That's ridiculous. I don't see a good reason for that. Because like you said, people are learning more about their candidates as time goes on. They're getting more interested in the election process the closer it gets to the primary in their area. There are a lot of states that offer same-day registration. There's no reason why New York should require this party affiliation change all the way back in October. Yeah, I've encountered a lot of people who have had that problem too, who weren't registered in time because of that reason. And yeah, there's really no good reason for that as far as helping people to participate in the election process. And I'm hearing more complaints from people who are Sanders supporters. I don't know if that's because Sanders supporters maybe are more enthusiastic and more involved in the process, or if it's because of a different reason. But I will say the majority of the people I've heard these issues from have been people who are supporting Bernie.
And I think a common problem, because I've experienced this in my life, you've experienced this, I'm sure, is when let's say it's not nefarious and it's just, state and local stupidity, incompetence, but when people are realizing that, one girl looked online April 1st to see, make sure she was registered Democrat, she's registered Democrat. She looks back April 6th, not affiliated.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you contact your Board of Elections, the voter protection line, all this, because bureaucracy, this is how it works, you're given 3 other numbers to call. You call those 3 other numbers. You're then told, oh, you really need to call this person. Or you don't get a call back. So basically, you're chasing your tail between your legs when many of the times it's an error on their part. People, it seems to me, people don't really have a recourse. One person told me he was told, well, you could, go to the judge in your, town.
I've heard of one bill in New York to open the primaries. So, but that in the next few days, that's not going to be happening. But that would be, amazing if that could go through. I've heard about there is a group that is filing a lawsuit in New York, apparently tomorrow, and there are, and I'm sure you've also heard about this. Apparently in New York, if you can't vote, you can get a court order possibly. Since I don't live in New York, I don't know all the details about that, but apparently there will be judges on call on primary day, and some people may be able to get court orders to allow them to vote that day.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure people that are going to vote on their lunch break are then going to, have time to get court orders and.
Exactly. No, definitely. I mean, we're all on very short time schedules. People who are given 45 minutes for lunch aren't going to have time to jump through those kind of hoops. I think really, we don't want to see this happen again. We want to push for open primaries. I think that some states are going to start considering it with the lawsuits that are being filed over these problems. But I think we should all be pushing for that. We should all be really, really passionate about it because, it just seems like there are way, way too many hoops that people are having to jump through just to try to vote, and it shouldn't be that difficult in a democracy.